East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.
This is East Idaho Newsmakers with Nate Eaton.
Welcome to East Idaho Newsmakers. We are glad you are with us today. We are pleased to have Congressman Raul Labrador with us. He is one of 3 candidates that have announced that they are running for governor on the Republican ticket. Congressman, thanks for coming to visit with us today.
It's my pleasure.
So
Thanks for having me.
We'll start off with the basic question of why you have decided to run for governor.
You know, I believe the state is a wonderful state, but I don't think it's had the right proper leadership in the governor's office. I think you need somebody who has a vision for the state, who understands that Idaho can do so much more, that our business environment could improve, that our educational environment can improve, that the way we associate with each other can be better. And I think I have that vision for the state. I have served in the legislature for 4 years. Now I've served in Congress for 7 years. And I believe that I have the conservative principles that will bring Idaho forward in the right direction. So I just decided that it was important for me to get in this race. And I also have a personal reason. I've been away from my family now for 7 years. My family still lives in Idaho. I go back to Washington, D.C. every day, every week, and I come home on the weekends. And I miss my family. I still feel that energy and that need to serve. But I think I can do it at the local level.
There's a lot of people that know we have congressmen and we have senators and they go to D.C., but then they really don't know what you all do there.
Correct.
We see on the news, there's arguing, there's fighting, there's maybe bills being passed. But what is an average day like for you as a congressman when you're in the nation's capital?
Well, an average day, it starts about 8 o'clock in the morning, and you go to a breakfast or you go to a meeting dealing with Idaho industries or dealing with other people, other issues that you're talking about. Then you start going to a lot of meetings. You start going to meetings with constituents, and you meet, and hundreds of people fly out to Washington, D.C. every year to meet with us. Then we have, throughout the day, we have all our hearings. So I serve on 2 committees, the Judiciary Committee and the Natural Resources Committee, and I serve on about 6 different subcommittees within those 2 committees. So I have hearings throughout the day that I have to do. So it's a pretty busy day. It usually starts about 8:30 in the morning, and you end about 9 or 9:30 at night every single day. You're voting on the floor. You're having, you may have an evening meeting or a dinner that you have to attend. So there's quite a bit going on.
So in these hearings, let's take the health care debate, which just went on for weeks and weeks. You're discussing health care and what should be included in the bill, what shouldn't be. Is that kind of how?
So that's an interesting question. So I'm not on any of the committees that deal with health care. Okay. So I didn't do any committee hearings on health care. However, I do belong to a group called the Freedom Caucus. So I formed this group in Washington, D.C. About a few years ago. We realized that Republicans were making a lot of promises to the public, but they weren't keeping those promises, and we were frustrated. There was a group of about 40 of us conservatives that were just frustrated that our leadership was not doing the things that we promised the American people that we were going to do. And we have been working through a group in Congress, and it just wasn't being effective. So we decided to form a group, which is the Freedom Caucus. I'm one of the 9 founding members of this group, and we were reform-minded Republicans. So we decided to form this group. We're conservatives. We're going to work together for conservative policy. So even though I don't serve on the Committee of Jurisdiction on Healthcare, for about 2 months in the Freedom Caucus, we brought in experts on healthcare who talked to us about conservative policy ideas on the healthcare issue. And we came up with several proposals that we proposed to our leadership, and eventually most of those proposals were incorporated into the healthcare plan, which was interesting because it's one of the first times that you had an outside group that wasn't directly involved, in the committee process that actually influenced the outcome of that legislation. So I've always been, I'm a reform-minded Republican, I'm a conservative Republican. I want to make sure that first we do the things that we claim we stand for. So one of my most frustrating things in Washington, D.C. is watching Republican after Republican who claims that they believe in something, but they don't follow through. Because I'll tell you what, the easiest thing to do is to claim that you're a conservative. You put it on your papers, you put it on your mailers. It's easy to flood, the state with mailers claiming you're a conservative, but very few people follow through on this. And throughout my career, throughout my time in office, in public service, again and again, I've been able to prove that I don't only talk about being a conservative, that I'm actually a conservative, and I advocate for conservative policies for the people of Idaho and putting Idahoans first.
So how do you fix healthcare?
Yeah.
First of all, you're in Congress, so you have that side of things, but let's say you're elected governor. Is there anything in your position as leader of our state that you could do to fix it?
Absolutely. So if you look at what we did, so that the amendments that we asked to be included in the bill were all state-based amendments. Because what we realized, the frustrating part was that all these Republicans said that they wanted to repeal Obamacare, but when it comes down to repealing Obamacare, you're actually repealing some things that are quite popular with people because they're getting free stuff. If you give people free stuff, it's hard to take the free stuff away from people. Well, Obamacare, the reason health insurance costs so much is because there are regulations in Obamacare that require health insurance to provide services that people don't need. So as a young man, you're paying for pregnancy, even though you're never going to get pregnant, right? But you're paying for that because Obamacare requires that. Older women who are never going to get pregnant in their health care bill are paying for pregnancy services. They're paying for things that they don't need because what Obamacare decided to do is to require all the health insurance plans to be the same. Before Obamacare, we had individualized insurance plans where if you were a young person, healthy, you were paying really little for health insurance, and other people were paying a little bit more because they were maybe a little bit older or they had different needs. Or if you were a young woman who just got married, you wanted pregnancy services in your health insurance. So everybody paid a little bit different. Obamacare required everybody to be treated the same, but what we're doing is we're forcing 95% of the people in America to pay a higher rate so we can subsidize about 5% of the people. So what we tried to do in repealing Obamacare is getting rid of those insurance regulations that were increasing the cost of health insurance and increasing the cost of health care. We couldn't get that done at the federal level, but we inserted an amendment in there that allowed the state governors and state legislatures to repeal those regulations. I thought that was quite a good way to fix it. And I still think as governor, even under the existing Obamacare rules, even if we don't repeal it, and I hope that we end up repealing it, that we're going to be able to work with the administration to make sure that we repeal some of those regulations, that we get around some of those regulations. Because what Obamacare did in essence is they give all the authority to the Health and Human Services Director, to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So as a governor who's actually personal friends with Tom Price, who's the Health and Human Services Secretary, I'm going to be able to work with him and make sure that the state has as little regulation as possible, that we get away from some of the high costs of health insurance and health care. And there's a lot of things we can do. We need to look at the pools, risk pools that we were doing in the past. I don't know if you know this, but Idaho in the past had the lowest health insurance rates of any of our neighbors, of actually in the whole United States. And the reason we had such low cost of health insurance is because we had the smallest amount of regulations in the state, in the whole United States.
So healthcare is a big issue that a lot of people are concerned about. Education is another big issue for people here in East Idaho.
Yeah.
There's several bonds that have been passed or are up for a vote soon. Schools are overcrowded. Teachers aren't paid a lot of money. As the governor, what would you plan to do about that?
But the first thing you have to do is you have to look at the existing system, and you have to realize, is this system working? And the reality is that the system can be so much better. We have great teachers, we have great parents, we have great school boards and great students, but yet we're not number one in the nation. Idaho should be number one in education, and we're not. And the question is, why not? Because we have all the things in place to do that. And I think it's because of the bureaucracy. And one of the problems that we have is that Idaho adopted Common Core. I'm the only person in this race who wants to get rid of Common Core. I don't want to just fix Common Core. I want to get rid of Common Core. Because what Common Core is doing is taking time away from teachers in the classroom, from teaching, from doing the things that they have to do. If you talk to the teachers right now, they have to spend all of their time teaching to the tests. They have to spend all their time doing things that they don't really want to do, where they feel that they're not being as effective. So one of the things you have to do is you have to bring education back to the local level. You got to let the local school teachers, the local school boards, the local parents decide how they want to fashion the educational system for their teachers, for their kids. And we got to put these kids first. We have to realize that education is about the kids, not the unions, not all these other things. It's about making sure that the kids are actually getting an education. I have 5 children. My wife and I have been married for 26 years. We have 5 children, 3 that are in college, 2 that are still in high school. And I have watched some amazing teachers in the state, but they're constantly frustrated because they feel that the bureaucracy continues to take time away from them, from the time that they can spend teaching the students with things that are a little bit less relevant. And you talk to the principals and the school administrators, and they're frustrated because, you know, we're passing all these school bonds, right? Because we don't have enough money. But we have this huge layer of bureaucracy at the middle, the mid-level management. And the reason they have so much bureaucracy is because the state keeps mandating all these different requirements for them to do. And the more mandates they get from the state level, the more administrators they need so they can comply with those mandates. So what I want to do is I want to centralize, I want to make sure that that centralized education system that we have, we need to bring it back to the local community, and we need to trust the teachers and the administrators and the parents to provide that quality of education.
What are your thoughts about charter schools?
I'm a big proponent of charter schools. I'm a big proponent of all forms of education. I think the more competition we have in the state between the schools, the better it's going to be. I believe that we should look for a way where we can help students that want to go to private school, whether it's through vouchers or some other form of tax credits or something, because I just believe in competition. I believe competition in America makes things stronger. It's one of the things that makes America great, is that we have a lot of competition, and I think if we insert and bring competition to the educational system, I think you're going to see a lot of the problems in education go away. But these are hard things to do, because you have great teachers, but the teachers' unions sometimes get in the way. The teachers are fantastic, but we're going to have to be able to work with the teachers' unions, because they're the ones that work on these issues, and we're going to have to figure out a way where together we can actually do something to improve the level of education in Idaho.
And just a few months ago, the voters here approved ITech to be turned into Eastern Idaho College.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about having a community college here on this side of the state now?
I'm not opposed to it. I know that there was some controversy. It's a local decision that I don't think as governor I should have anything to do with it. It should be something for the voters. But here's my concern. We have a lot of community colleges throughout the United States, throughout the state of Idaho. My biggest concern is that we are not educating our kids to be prepared for the 21st century. So what are the community colleges spending their time doing right now? Is they're retraining kids that didn't learn what they should have learned in high school and in middle school. So my concern is making sure that a community college is actually being used for preparation for the future. So kids can, whether they want to do a trade or whether they want to prepare for, additional college education, that what they're doing is they're preparing for the future. Instead, what our community colleges are doing right now, for the most part, is they're retraining kids. They're teaching them the things that they should have learned in high school. Well, guess what? That's wasting a lot of money. So all that money that we're spending on education in the high school is going to waste in many instances, and now we're spending that money in the community college level. The other thing that concerns me is that I don't believe our community colleges are doing a good job of working with the local communities, figuring out how they can, what are the needs that the local community has when it comes to jobs, and what are the needs that the kids have. How do they prepare themselves to have high-paying jobs in the local economy? I hear all the time from local employers that they can't find a trained workforce. But yet we're bragging about we have the highest number of community colleges students that we've ever had. How is that possible that we have all these students, but yet all these companies are not able to find the workforce that they need? There's a disconnect there. And I think you need leadership in the governor's office that can make sure that we can do these things, that we're preparing kids to find autonomy in the future, so the kids can realize, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to be a plumber? Do you want to work on coding? What are the things that you want to do? And our high schools and our community colleges should be working towards making sure that those kids can fulfill their dreams and do the things that they want to do.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to talk about what you've learned being a congressman, what you've learned as a father, and what you plan to do as governor, kind of what your platform will be, and we'll touch on a few other things. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to East Idaho Newsmakers. We are joined this week with Congressman Raul Labrador visiting us. He is one of 3 men who have announced that they are running for governor. We talked before the break about health care, education. Let's talk about what you've learned during your years as a congressman in Washington, and maybe some mistakes that you've made personally that have made you a better person.
Well, the biggest thing that I have learned is that you have a lot of people in government that just want a title, that just say whatever they want to, they want to say, whatever people want to hear, just so they can get that job. But when it comes down to doing the hard work of actually legislating, of passing legislation that is difficult, that improves society and improves America, but it's going to be unpopular because it's going to be something that is difficult to do, that is conservative, most people run away. They're not willing to do the right thing. So that's a big lesson, and it's something that's important for this race. Because I think what you need to do in this race is you need to look at people's experience, and you need to look at people's records. You know, who has stood on conservative principles? I think most Idahoans want a conservative governor who has a conservative vision for the state, that is thinking about the next 5, 10, 20 years in Idaho, which direction Idaho is going. It's easy to sit here with you and tell you that I'm going to do all these things. But you need to look at who has actually followed through on the promises that they made, on the things that they talked about when they were campaigning for office. And I'm really the only person in this race who has done that on a consistent conservative philosophy. So that's one of the things that I have learned. It is difficult to work in a body of 435 people. You know, I mean, think about it. If anybody's on any board, you know, whether it's a school board or a local board or a business board, usually boards are not that big. You know, usually have 5, 7, or 9, because you need to get people to agree on something. Imagine having a board of 435 people, where everyone is a type A personality who has a strong opinion. Those things are you know, that's something that's interesting to work in. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to come back to the state. Because I have noticed that in Congress, we don't seem to follow through on the things that we have promised the American people. I have tried very hard to get our leadership to follow through on those things, but some people in Washington just don't want to do it. And you can't get the majority of the 435 to do that. So I'm excited to come back because I've had the experience as a legislator, but I've also had executive experience as a business owner. I was a small business owner. I had a small law firm. I had 9 employees who worked for me, and I was able to get things done and move things forward. And I think I can come back to the state with with my business experience and my legislative experience and the vision that I have for the state of Idaho, and really move things forward in the right direction.
What was the biggest mistake, or what's been the biggest mistake you've made that has taught you a lesson over the past 6 years?
You know, unfortunately, it was. Even though it was, I kept pushing my leadership to do the right thing, and their answer was always, we don't have the White House, we don't have the Senate, so we can't. You know, it's too hard to do it right now. And it was actually believing that they were right that until we had the White House and the Senate, we were not going to, maybe they were right. Maybe we were not going to be able to do as many things. I still kept pushing for it, but now I realize that it wasn't a lack of having the president, or it wasn't a lack of having the majority in the Senate. It was a lack of willingness to do the right thing because it was too hard. So as governor, I think I need to understand that when somebody keeps telling me that, well, we can't do this because we don't have whatever, whatever the excuse is that you have to be able to work with people and say, no, this is the right time to do it, and these are the reasons why. And as governor of the state, if you lay out that vision and you work with the legislature and you convince the people of Idaho that those are the right things, that's the way to move forward on doing the things for the state. It's not being complacent and just thinking that maybe we can wait till everything is just right for the change that we're asking for. The reality is that the time is never right. You have to make the effort and go through the exercise to make the time right for whatever change you want at the state level or at the national level.
How would you rate President Trump's first 7 or 8 months in office?
I think he deserves an A for what he's doing. I think he's doing a great job, and this is one of the things where I think I have something to offer that other people in this race do not. I actually have a relationship with President Trump. I have a relationship with Mike Pence as a personal friend, the Vice President of the United States. Most of the members of the cabinet served in the House and in Congress with me, and I know them personally. And I think what they have done is, at least at the executive level, at the administrative level, they have just encouraged businesses and everyday Americans to just do the right things and to invest and to do things. There's a totally different feel right now in the business environment. People are more excited about doing business. They have more optimism. If you look, in spite of what the media is saying, if you look, we have record number of jobs being created in America. You have higher optimism in America. You have the last quarter of this year, we had the highest GDP that we've had in a long time. In fact, it was higher than any of the quarters under President Obama during his 8 years. So things are going well. You do have the media and some leftists in Washington, D.C. and nationally that are trying to, they have not accepted the fact that President Trump won. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that President Trump is not successful. But, and some of them, they excuse it by saying, well, he tweets things or he says things that are inappropriate. But the reality is that they just don't like the fact that Hillary Clinton lost. They're upset about that, and they're never going to accept that President Trump is their president. I didn't like President Obama, but I had to accept that he was my president. I did everything in my power to make sure that I worked to defeat him, and we weren't successful, but I still had to accept that he was the president of the United States, and I had to give him due deference as president of the United States. I think we need to be careful with that a little bit, but I think he's doing a good job. And I think as governor of the state, I have this relationship. I actually worked to get him elected. If you remember, there was a time where a bunch of Republicans ran away from President Trump, and they said that they couldn't support him. I couldn't fathom seeing Hillary Clinton in the White House, because I don't think the optimism that we see today in business and that everyday Americans have, I don't think you would see it under Hillary Clinton. So I actually spent 2 to 3 weeks campaigning on the trail with President Trump. I traveled through the state of Florida with President Trump. I traveled with his family in Arizona. I was with Mike Pence in Utah campaigning for them. And I'm the only person in this race who actually went out of his way to help President Trump. And I think that will be good for Idaho, because that relationship, that personal relationship that I have, will help us when we need to, when we're dealing with natural resource issues. Ryan Zinke, I have his phone number. I can give him a call and I can work with him. When like I said earlier, when we have issues with healthcare, I have Tom's phone number. I can work with them. So I know these people personally. I'm going to be able to work with them in a good way.
You mentioned you're a father of 5 children.
I am.
How did you meet your wife?
Great question. So let me tell you my story. My story is interesting. I was actually born and raised in Puerto Rico. I lived in Puerto Rico till the age of 13. Until then, Spanish was my first language and my main language. But I moved to the mainland when I was 13. I went from Puerto Rico to Las Vegas. My mother worked in the hotel industry. She was a single mom. I was her only child. We moved to Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, I actually became a member of the LDS faith. And I became a Mormon there, and I ended up going to BYU. Went on a mission for a couple of years to Chile, and when I came back from my mission, I met this young, beautiful woman from Boise, Idaho, and the rest is history. We both graduated from BYU. I ended up going to University of Washington Law School, and after law school, we both wanted to raise our family here in Idaho. So we've been married for 26 years. My oldest son is 25, my youngest is 14. We have 4 boys and 1 girl. 3 right now are in college, and 2 are in high school, and they're wonderful kids.
What has being a father taught you?
You know, being a father's been the most amazing thing. If you think about it, my mom was such an amazing woman, and she told me really early on, she wanted me to always understand that just because I wasn't raised by a father, that she wanted me to understand that my responsibility was to be a good father.
So your father wasn't in your life?
I would see him once a year at most. Yeah. But she wanted me to be a good person, and she said, you have a responsibility to get an education. You have a responsibility to do well for yourself, to get a good job. But she always told me your most important responsibility is to be a good husband and a good father. You need to make sure that you become the kind of person who can do those things. So I have always, to me, it's been so personal that I want to give my kids what my father never gave me. And I think I've done a pretty good job. You can ask them, and maybe they disagree, right? But I've tried to give them everything. I've tried to give them every opportunity. I try to give them as much as I can. But the most important thing that I try to give them is understand that they also have a responsibility to work and to give back, you know, because they actually were raised a little bit more privileged than I was. You know, I was raised very poor. They had an upper middle class upbringing, and so we made them work hard in the home. They had chores. They had to have jobs. You know, we require them all to do scouts. My boys are Eagles. You know, I have 2 Eagle Scouts and 1 more who's going to become an Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout myself. We made sure that they participated in community and church and all those things. Because I actually think that's our biggest responsibility. And that's one of the biggest failings we have in America is we have a cultural problem in America where we are raising kids that are no longer responsible, that they're relying on their parents, relying on the government, relying on all these things. And the number one thing, my kids hated this, but every time they would say something was not fair, I would tell them, life isn't fair. And you have to understand that. And as a kid, life isn't going to be fair. As an adult, life isn't going to be fair. In college, it isn't going to be fair. When you're a parent, it isn't going to be fair. It's up to you to make sure that you take this unfairness and make it something that is good for you and your family. And I'm really proud of my kids. And so far, knock on wood, they've done good things. And I'm proud of the things that they've done. And I think it's because of the way that we brought them up. And we've been fortunate to have, you know, a great community and great church friends and people who care for them.
Last question, why should people vote for you?
You know, it's pretty simple. We're at a crossroads right now in Idaho. And the people of Idaho need to decide whether they're happy with the way things are going, whether they think business as usual is okay, whether they're okay with the government picking winners and losers. You know, we have a tax system that picks winners and losers in the states, that some people get certain benefits and some people don't. We have an educational system that is not working for everybody. We have a healthcare system that is imploding. And I'm the only person in this race that has a vision for the future of Idaho, that understands that with true conservative policies, with true conservative principles, if we actually put Idahoans first and we put Idaho first, and we decide that we are going to stop picking winners and losers in government, that everyone will prosper, that everyone will do better, and that the state of Idaho will be brighter and have a brighter future. So we're excited about this race. We're excited about what's going on, and I just hope that people can go to our website. It's raullabrador.com, and they can sign up, they can call, they can donate, they can do anything they want, and they can learn more about how we can make Idaho brighter in the future.
Congressman Labrador, Raul Labrador, who is running for governor, thank you for coming in. We will include a link to your website as well as your social media pages down in the story below. And we thank you for watching. Have a good week.
East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.